Hello. Because certain things I might say might trigger a reaction from such platforms as YouTube, I am going to be quite careful about how I introduce this particular topic under discussion. But you will see what I'm going to be talking about from the capture at the side. For those of you who cannot see the screen that clearly, I shall mention that Dr. John Campbell has discussed this issue. I am not going to go into the facts and figures because, as I said, Dr. Campbell has done that and he's better informed than I am of all those sorts of things. So if you want the stats, you're going to have to go to his channel for them. What I'm going to be talking about is why such a treaty has its disadvantages, and then I'm going to give you a specific case which comes from our National Health Service, a National Health Service which is, as it says, national, and therefore there are certain procedures which it has set up because of a committee of doctors who have decided that this is the best way to treat certain conditions. This has led, because it's a national organisation, it has led to certain problems, one of which I shall be talking about. Before I get onto that, I shall tell you I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds, and I let you know when I've uploaded new videos on Twitter and Gab. If you want to contribute to my channel financially, you can do that. The links are in the description. But you can help this channel a great deal just by clicking that like button. And of course, by sharing this video and by subscribing to my channel. And if you're on YouTube, there's a problem with subscriptions. Just check that you're still subscribed. Now, this is from the British government website, the WHO Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. And it gives the background that in 2021, a group of world leaders announced an initiative for a new treaty on pandemic preparedness and response. This initiative was taken to the World Health Organization and will be negotiated, yeah, I suppose so, drafted and debated by a newly established intergovernmental negotiation body. Now, I can tell you my attitude to this sort of thing, because in theory, of course, it's a very good idea. It means that if there's some sort of infection that's likely to hit the whole world, then the whole world can get together to deal with it. And indeed, the World Health Organization has done that. For instance, it has, let's see, I have a page here. Yes, here we are. It eradicated smallpox because it had the whole world in the organisation, or more or less. It could send people out to vaccinate against smallpox, and the disease has been eliminated from even the most remote corners of the world now. And I'd say that's a good thing. It's almost managed to get rid of polio. It's still working on that one, but polio is a horrendous disease, and they've managed to deal with that as well. And it developed an Ebola vaccine, for instance. So it's that sort of thing which the WHO is very good for and has done very well. That is a matter of curing or preventing disease. It's not a governmental thing. It's not something that takes over, that supersedes the governments of the various countries. It's an organisation that offers help. So that's one thing the WHO is good for. But when you want to give that same organisation the power to override other governments' laws or cultural differences, or even geographical differences, which might make different diseases act in different ways. In some places, hardly any trouble at all, whereas in others, a very serious illness. And if you have an entire world situation, if you have an entire world legal system dealing with that, you're going to be mistreating some people. And so giving the WHO that sort of power is, well, to my mind, a bit like having a doctor write out a prescription that cures you of your asthma. You know, he gives you an inhaler of some sort, and then he says he has a lot of patients with exactly the same problem because they're all allergic to cherry trees in that same area. And so he insists that you sign a document which would give him and all the other doctors in the area the power to force the cutting down of all cherry trees in that part of the world to prevent more asthma. Yeah, and also to give him and all the other doctors permission to thereafter monitor your oxygen levels and making sure you're keeping up with the exercise and the healthy eating or all the rest of it. Now, I don't need to remind you of the mistaken behaviour of the WHO under the guidance of a person who shall remain nameless, and him taking the advice of a country that shall remain nameless, when that country assured that nameless doctor that a certain illness that shall remain nameless was not communicable. And because of that one single mistake by one person, the entire world was exposed to a situation which shall remain nameless. When you have a central authority, that sort of thing can happen again and again. And when that central organisation makes mistakes, instead of affecting a small group, like one doctor being a bit silly, then you get the whole world affected by it. And that could be a problem. Now, I'm going to deal with a specific example, and that is the Ashya King case. Now, what happened in the case of Ashya King was he was a child who had a brain tumour, and his parents, it says here, took their son out of Southampton General Hospital in 2014 over a disagreement with doctors regarding his treatment. You see, the standard NHS treatment at the time was chemotherapy. And he had surgery, it was successful surgery, it was done well, but after that, chemotherapy was the treatment of choice, because that was the standard countrywide practice. However, the Kings had been doing some research, and they discovered a treatment which they thought superior. It's called proton therapy, but it was not available in Britain. And they thought it was less harmful than the conventional radiotherapy and chemotherapy, which was what the child was prescribed. The therapy was available in the Czech Republic. So the parents refused to take the Southampton Hospital's treatment, and they decamped. They got out of the country with their child en route to taking him to the Czech Republic. Now, I want to point out, they were prepared to pay for this themselves. They weren't trying to get it out of the National Health Service. But Southampton Hospital dug its heels in. Now, you may say that the doctor, the surgeon in charge of this, was a psychopath for not letting the child just go. This was his patient and he was going to do his treatment. But you could say he had the backing of the other doctors, I assume. So this was just more likely a case of a set of doctors thinking along certain lines. for sure what they were thinking of was saving that child's life. And they thought that this proton therapy idea was a bit new age and ineffective. Anyway, the parents did a runner with the child. They were finally tracked down to Spain, where, because Britain was in the EU at the time, an arrest warrant was issued. I mean, the hospital had gone way over its remit by this time. They'd got carried away, for sure. But you know how the steamroller of official channels, just once it gets going, it takes a lot to stop it. And the parents were arrested. So this sick child was separated from his hysterical parents. And there was an international fuss about it. Of course, it was too ridiculous for words, and Southampton Hospital has been stained by that egregious example ever since, because I haven't forgotten the name, and it was nearly 10 years ago now. In the end, David Cameron stepped in. He said this was stupid, and he called for an urgent outbreak of common sense. And his deputy said it was not appropriate to throw the full force of the law at the couple. So the parents were released, and then I'm not sure, I think they had to go back to Britain, and there was a court case, and this took days, and meanwhile the child was not getting the recommended treatment. And but although the doctors at the High Court argued that there was no difference in the treatment, the finding was for the parents, who then finally got their child to the Czech Republic, and he had proton therapy. A year later, apparently, according to the father, the brain tumour had disappeared. But at the same time, a 2015 report reviewing the case, and that must have been an NHS review, stated that the parents' decision to deny their child chemotherapy had reduced his chances of survival by 30%. And what they said, their solution to this whole problem was that people should talk more sympathetically with the parents. Well, a year later, the NHS decided that it would treat children with that particular illness, or allow them to travel to be treated. So it took 2 years for them to come round to that idea. And then in 2018, MRI scans conducted in Southampton showed the child to be free of cancer. So the parents, it seems, were quite right. But what happened was the NHS had a procedure, because that had been set down as a national thing, and this is only a national thing, then they were stuck with that and had to actually run from the country to get their child treated. And the only reason they managed in the end, despite the European Union-wide hunt for them, was because the British Prime Minister stepped in at that point. If he decided to distance himself from this, then I'm not sure what would have happened. But probably the child would have been forcibly treated by chemotherapy, and the parents would have been serving a jail sentence. You know, these things do tend to get out of control, don't they? So this was a national thing. Now imagine if this was a worldwide thing. Why would a medical facility in the Czech Republic even bother to develop proton therapy if they knew that they would have to be handing in documents to a worldwide organisation, which might take years to come through? You see, there's a matter of funding and resources involved. They possibly wouldn't even have bothered. Do you see what I mean about small, local, freelance organisations are in many ways a lot better than one vast, giant one, except in some circumstances, as I said. vaccines for various highly contagious illnesses are something that the WHO have done very well indeed. I'm not knocking them. What I'm saying is, when a big organisation that has had some success then oversteps its remit, you're always going to have problems. Okay, well, that's my take on the WHO treaty, and till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.